Welcome to Innovation and Design Thinking Introduction. During the next 40 minutes, we're going to be taking a look at how you might go about creating an effective innovation framework for your organization and how to use design thinking as a method to enable that innovation framework to deliver a truly robust culture of innovation in your organization. My name is Tor Schuler. I am with Avanade. I am the innovation lead for the Southwest region, and I'm a senior director in our innovation organization. I'm also leading our Houston-based innovation center and experience center. And when I have some spare time, I mostly work on AI, IoT, and certainly also delivering design thinking sessions internally as well as to our clients. But enough of that. Let's talk about innovation. What makes innovation successful in an organization? And I want to kind of look at desirability, viability, and feasibility as the key drivers to innovation. So let's take a look at how that might look like. Innovation, in the end, is about finding new ways to address challenges and issues that our stakeholders face in their everyday life. But how do we know what our stakeholders really want? How do we know what they really need to be successful? Well, one way to look at this is to look at the ingredients of innovation as desirability, viability, and feasibility. Let's talk about each of those in a little bit of detail. I'm going to start with this blue circle here, which is the feasibility, the technical aspects. Feasibility as in, can it be done? If you have an idea, if you want to do something new, can we actually do it? Is it physically possible? So feasibility deals with all the technical. It's something that generally we are very, very comfortable with. It is not super hard from an engineering perspective, to figure out if something is doable or not, right? So generally, this is an area that we're very, very comfortable with. It's a very deterministic area that we can work in. We can figure this out fairly quickly. Viability, up here, deals with the business aspect. Not can it be done, but actually does it make sense to do it from an economic perspective? For example, it might be fun and feasible to use a robot dog to fetch the newspaper. Is it viable? Probably not. So where viability and feasibility meet, this little slice here, that's the area of implementation. That's where IT generally plays. Platform implementation, rolling out teams to the organization, bringing SharePoint online, deploying SAP. Those are all things that create transformation that are both feasible and viable and lead to implementation projects, but they hardly ever create transformational results in our business. They are not really innovation. In order to truly look at the innovative sphere, there's a key component that we need to bring in, and that is desirability, the human element, the perspective of our users and our stakeholders. And desirability, unlike feasibility and viability, is this squishy concept. It's not easy, it's not deterministic. It is very, very subjective. What is desirable for one person might not be desirable for another. It's very, very hard to assess. But if you can, in fact, get a handle on the desirability, you can then find the sweet spot where feasibility, viability, and desirability meet. And that is where true innovation, that's where true disruption is happening. So how do we go about assessing desirability? How do we understand what our stakeholders really want? Not necessarily what they're telling us they want, but the underlying emotion, the underlying driver of what it really is. Well, there's this concept of empathy, which is really, really big in terms of determining desirability. And empathy is not something that we are, as business people in the business environment, tremendously comfortable with. But it's something that we have to become comfortable with if we truly want to take a look at human-centered innovation. Innovation that creates positive outcomes for people, which is ultimately what we're all about. So in order to assess viability, I have a little video that I want to show you. It's from Brené Brown. So let's take a look.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
What makes something better is connection. Let's take a look at how empathy applied, how creating connection and being empathic can make a real difference in the lives of people and can lead to real tangible innovation. And I have a case study that I want to share with you on this. It's a case study, it's a project that GE did. GE, the medical group in GE, they manufacture these MRI machines. And in this particular situation, there was a hospital chain, and they were looking at sedation rates for kids that have cancer. These kids, they come in, they're very sick, of course, and they have to be in the MRI machine. They have to hold still for a certain amount of time for the MRI to be successful. And generally, kids have a hard time laying still in these machines. They're scared, they're fidget, and so they'll need to be sedated. Now, sedation, of course, it's expensive. Number one, it's also dangerous, has a potential host of side effects. And so the question was, how might we provide an experience where kids will no longer need to be sedated for an MRI? So the engineering team at GE, they looked at this problem, they looked at it from various different angles, and in the end, what they decided to do is create a joint team where they actually brought in kids as part of the team, the stakeholders, if you want to kind of think about it like that. And so they've really connected with those kids. They started to understand what these kids go through, not when they take an MRI, but really in their daily lives. And the key takeaway from this, in hindsight probably pretty obvious, is these kids, because they are very, very sick, they don't have a normal life. They do not get to go outside to play with their friends, to climb a tree, to have an adventure. So this missing of adventure in their lives was a key finding when that team worked with those kids. And so the challenge kind of morphed a little bit into how might we make having an MRI like going to a theme park and having an adventure. And it started out really, really small with just some decals, different room layouts. If you think about it, these MRI machines, they're big, they're heavy, so they're usually in the cellar of the hospital. Small rooms, dark, not very well lit. So the first thing they did is they just basically knocked out some walls, made the room larger, put good lighting in, put some murals on the wall, and just basically decorated the machine. And they started out with, just with poster paper, with drawings and stuff like that, just to make it a little bit nicer. Then it evolved into, just decals that you can apply to this equipment to create a theme that these kids can experience. But it didn't stop there. They went one step further and gamified this entire approach. There was this one experience which I really love, which is kind of the Starship Enterprise, I guess, experience where it's a space adventure. You kind of see the decals here all about space and starships and things like that. And in addition to doing this, the GE engineers developed an online game. Actually, for your mobile device, for your Android, it was a VR game. Actually, with the you could do that with the kind of the Samsung headset. These are cheap, like $20 or so. The parents could buy that headset, put their phones in, and there was this app. And that app essentially showed the engine room of the Starship Enterprise. And if you think about it, if you ever watched Enterprise or the Star Trek, the noise that the warp engine makes is like this vroom, 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 vroom. It's the same noise, really, as an MRI engine makes. So what that game essentially did, it conditioned the kid that says, hey, your mission is to fly the Enterprise as fast as possible. And to do that, you got to stand as still as possible. The stiller you stand and the stiller you sit, the faster the Enterprise will go. And so these kids, they played that game, and it obviously looks great. The stars are coming at you. You had that noise, boom, 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 and they started to be conditioned to the actual situation that they're gonna experience in an MRI engine. And then when they go to have the MRI, they go in there, they hear that same noise. They're laying still because they're part now of the game. And they come out and they say to the parents, "Daddy, did you see how fast I went?" Just by gamifying this experience. What a groundbreaking approach. Think about that. And the end result was they were able to change the dynamics of the sedation entirely, to go from more than 90% sedation to less than 10% sedation. Not by changing the way an MRI engine works, because that would have been way too expensive, but simply by changing the way that their users, the kids, were experiencing the process of going through an MRI. And that is what empathy and connection can deliver. It has nothing to do with technical solutions. It has nothing to do with processes. It has everything to do with understanding and empathizing with the pain of your stakeholders. So think about that for a moment. So now we talked about understanding what our stakeholders want and using empathy to connect and to truly share where their pain lies. But it is as important to select the right innovation focus. I was talking about this, I mentioned they did not go out and build a new MRI engine. They did not create a new product. They simply changed the experience around the existing product. And that's where you come to the innovation ambition. Where is it that we want to innovate? What is it that we want to do? And for this, I have this nifty tool I'm going to introduce to you that you can easily use. It's a very easy to use tool. It's a matrix, right? 2 axes, where to play. These are our customers. And how to do it, how to win. These are our parts. So what we can see here, our where to play axis, we have 3 sections. Serving existing markets. These are our current customers that do business with us. And that customer term, please then don't get too hung up on it. Customers can be an external part. Customers can be internal to the organization. Those can be our users if we're in IT. Those can be our business partners if we are in HR. Whatever they are. These are the people that are using the products and the services that we're currently producing. There is adjacent markets. And then there are new markets. Similarly on how to win. What can we use to innovate? Well, we can use our existing products or services. We can add incremental products, buy something new, bring something new, and invent something new. Or we can develop whole new concepts and ideas. And if you kind of look at that, and you kind of draw some lines on here, what you see is this. Kind of when you play in this existing market, using existing products, our innovation focus, our innovation ambition is on the core of our business. And that is where it actually was in this GE example, if you think about it. If we look at kind of the adjacent market space and incremental product additions, we're looking at adjacencies. We're taking our products, we're expanding them out. It's not really transformational yet, but it might open up new markets, it might open new connections, it might defray costs. And then when we enter new markets and develop new products, we're going truly into the transformational space, where we disrupt the way that business is being done in our industry. And it's really important to understand where our innovation ambition lies. Because if my innovation ambition lies in the core, if I want to improve and innovate around my existing markets and my existing products, then maybe I shouldn't look at trying to do disruptive transformational change. Conversely, if I want to be a disruptor, I better look at new products, doing things differently, and addressing maybe new markets or adjacent markets. So understanding where we are, where we want to be in this matrix, and then looking where the projects that we're attempting to do, the initiatives that we're trying to carry out, where therefore will tell us whether we are aligned with our innovation agenda. To illustrate this a bit further, I have this tea kettle here. So let's talk about how a different innovation ambition might fundamentally change the way I approach innovation. So this tea kettle is a, okay tea kettle. And maybe what I get is I get complaints from my customers. They're flooding the phone lines because my handle here, that handle, is made out of metal. So it gets hot. So customers grab the handle to take the pot off the stove, burn their hands, and they're not happy. They're calling us and saying, hey, you gotta fix that. Okay? So if my innovation ambition is core, I want to make my product better, I might react to those incoming calls by saying, all right, maybe we just put some rubber around that handle. And that will innovate on top of my existing product. It'll improve my product. It'll address the concerns of my existing customers, and everybody is happy, and I have a better tea kettle. And that's awesome. But what if my innovation ambition is disruptive and transformational? Certainly, putting some rubber around this grid, not very transformational. However, if I take a step back, and I were to ask, well, why do my users use this tea kettle in the first place? I might come to the conclusion that they're using this to boil water. Well, I might ask, why would they want to boil water? And the answer might be, they want to make coffee. Maybe, I don't know. And so I might say, well, instead of creating a better tea kettle, why don't I come up with a better way to create coffee? Maybe a faster way to create coffee, maybe a more convenient way that does not require the use of a kettle. And maybe going down this route, what I come up with is a single pot delivery system like Keurig did. Now I'm disrupting this space, because I'm fundamentally changing the way that people go about making coffee. If my innovation ambition is core, I will never disrupt. If my innovation ambition is core, I will never invent the Keurig. And that's perfectly fine, depending on the business that I am in. So understanding where your innovation ambition lies is really, really important in this context. I want to now talk a bit about imagination and creativity. Obviously, if we want to be innovative, we have to be imaginative and we have to be creative. We have to think of new things, right? Well, if we take a look at that for a moment, creativity and innovation, I want to introduce this concept. I want to introduce this concept. Creativity and innovation are the results of imagination bounded by appropriateness. What does that mean? If you think about imagination, kids are very, very innovative. They can think of the greatest things. Now, can these things actually be done? Maybe, maybe not. They don't care though, right? It's unbounded imagination. It's divergent. Imagination is a very divergent process. It's the creation of choices. Many, many choices. How could I go about accomplishing whatever? I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could that. Doesn't matter whether I can actually do it, but this might be a way to approach it. And kids have this wonderful ability to totally discount appropriateness. They have no concept yet of appropriateness, of money, of budgets, of technical limitations. They just have ideas, and it's awesome. But imagination by itself does not lead to innovation. Because in order to be innovation, it actually has to be able to be executed. And that is where convergence comes in. Making choices. What is possible, given the budget constraints we might be having, given the technical constraints that we might be having. So innovation happens when we have imagination bounded by appropriateness. And we are very good as grown-ups with respect to appropriateness, with respect to convergence onto a viable solution. And here's that concept again of viability and feasibility are convergent concepts, whereas desirability is on the imagination space as a divergent concept. And so you see this diamond here that we're having. The divergent arc of the diamond, where we kind of look at all of the possibilities. We look broadly. And then the closing part of the diamond, the convergent process, where we make choices and narrow down towards the most appropriate solution for our challenge. So I want you to keep that diamond here in mind, because we're gonna come back to this at a moment. In order to be creative, something interesting. It's really, really hard. I would say it's impossible to do innovation on a schedule. It just doesn't work that way. Because again, think about it, innovation is the result of imagination bounded by appropriateness. But you need the imagination. And so it is really, really hard to be creative on command. You have to have that imagination. Some of the best ideas that you might have might occur where? In the shower, in the morning. Maybe when you wake up in the middle of the night. When your brain has time to decompress and to kind of think outside the box. So boredom actually is a key ingredient of making innovation happen. You have to give yourself the ability to decompress. You have to give yourself the ability to think out of the box. You have to give yourself the ability to fail. And that is not something that generally we're very good at in corporate America. We generally do not reward failure. We reward success. But in the innovation space, for every success, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of failures. And we have to become comfortable as organizations. If we want to build a vibrant culture of innovation, we have to be comfortable with the ability to fail. We have to be comfortable with the ability to allow our teams to be bored, to play ping pong, to play billiards, I don't know, whatever resonates, right? There's a reason why, if you go to Google's campus in California, it is the way it is. It is the encouragement of boredom. As strange as that sounds, that is what generates ideas. So that's something to keep in mind as we go down the route of creating this culture of innovation in our organizations. So with this, I'm going to now change tracks a bit and focus on design thinking as an enabler of the innovative process in an organization. We talked about desirability earlier. We talked about empathy, understanding, connecting with our stakeholders. I want to start to talk about design thinking with a quote by Steve Jobs. You might still know him from Apple. Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Most people cannot do think when we talk about design is look and feel. And there's some of that. But really, it's also how it works. How a user gets to experience the function of the product. Not just the look and feel, the function. In architecture, that might be the functionality of a room, a layout of the kitchen, the ability to have an open floor plan. That is design. In IT, it might be, how easy can I hold this phone in my hand? Not just does it look good, but also does it fit comfortably in my palm? Can I actually use it easily? How does it work? So we got to keep that in mind when we talk about design, not talk about look and feel. We talk about truly how it works. And then you might ask yourself, what does bad design look like? And there are many, many examples of bad design, and we've seen it in corporate America, particularly in IT, a lot. When you roll out a new product, and you kind of sit down, you see that screen the first time, and you think, who designed this? Has anybody actually sat down and kind of used this thing? It's terrible. Happens all the time. And then conversely, what does good design look like? Good design generally means I can give you this product and intuitively you can kind of figure out the way it's supposed to work because it is designed to enable the user. It does not require the user to adopt themselves to the product. So think about this, think about in your mind some examples of good design, bad design. When I do this session interactively, I always ask that to the audience just to see what people think is good design, is bad design. It's a very interesting exercise. But I have one example here I want to go through with you. Good design focuses on the user experience. And to illustrate this, I want to take a look at the ketchup bottle. Heinz ketchup, originally designed in 1880 and literally virtually unchanged for close to 100 years. And after that 100 years, the product engineers at Heinz kind of said, well, maybe we kind of should ask our people, our users, what they think about this design. We have new production methods now. We have lots of different possibilities. Plastic bottles have come around, all of this good stuff. So let's just see what they think. And so they did a user study. And the couple of things that they have identified that people really disliked about this design: ketchup gets stuck and won't come out. Interestingly enough, ketchup is a non-Newtonian fluid, so it is a solid, behaves as a solid when at rest, behaves as a liquid when the state change occurs and once it's in motion. The effect of that is, if you take this bottle of ketchup, you open it up, you turn it over, nothing comes out because the ketchup is in a solid state, behaves like a liquid. So now you have to affect the state transition. So you kind of just slamming that bottle on the back, and all of a sudden, you give it enough energy, state transition occurs, and it's going to go behave like a liquid. And just like a liquid, what happens is it'll just flow out of that bottle, and instead of a little bit of ketchup, you end up with half the bottle of ketchup on your plate. Has happened to all of us, and so that is one thing. And then obviously, once there is a certain amount of ketchup dispensed, the amount of ketchup that's left, the mass, is too low to still affect the state change just by slamming on the back, and so you kind of stuck that last third is just not going to come out unless you kind of set it upside down, let it sit for a couple of hours. So that was a major complaint. Get a sentence at the bottom. It's easy to lose your grip because it's the bottle is not very form fitting in your hand. So when you kind of have it in your hand, you slam it. Sometimes just the bottle goes flying. I've seen that. When it goes flying, it'll break. That obviously is a safety problem. So these are kind of some of the main things. One of the things from an instruction perspective, actually, the good folks at Heinz actually realized all of these issues because they actually had on the side of the original bottles, on the side here on that label, there were instructions on how to get the ketchup flowing. What it said is gently tap your knife at the neck of the bottle to get the ketchup flowing. So, all right, if your product needs instructions like that, you probably know that there's something not quite right. So, these designers at Heinz now, they started redesigning this bottle, and what they came up with is this. Addressing the majority of the concerns that they identified. So let's take a look. Redesign, the bottle was squeezable. Now, that state change that I was talking about, you don't have to bang on you just squeeze, and the ketchup comes out. It was designed to stand on its head, so that it is gravity fed. So the ketchup won't settle at the bottom. It's made out of plastic, non-breakable, and was easy to hold. It kind of was designed to fit into the shape of your hand. So, by listening to the users, by understanding the pain of the users, the designers at Heinz were able to create a design that was much better suited towards the intended use than the original bottle was. So I think a good design of a good example of a successful user-centric design. So, with that example in mind, let's talk about exactly what design thinking is. Design thinking is user-centric. It puts the user always in the center of our development efforts. Take this bridge, for example. This bridge is in Birmingham, UK. And generally, when I do this interactively, I ask people in the room, kind of to look at this contraption in the middle and what that is. And obviously, people generally recognize that this is done to prevent people on bicycles to kind of shoot through that straight bridge at a high speed. And on first sight, it does do that job, right? I mean, you cannot just shoot through here with your bicycle. You have to kind of get off. You have to kind of go around. But the other thing that obviously does, and I kind of always ask this question as well in my interactive sessions, what else does this do? Well, if you are parent with a stroller, it's hard to get through here with a stroller. If you're handicapped, in a wheelchair, again, very hard to get through, navigate. So while the designer of this contraption here has certainly taken a user-centric perspective, they have looked very narrowly at one segment of users and not at all users. What they have done is they have disadvantaged a number of users to create or to obtain their objective. And the takeaway is that those folks that did this spent a lot of time designing this contraption, designing this bridge, but they did not spend enough time thinking about all of the people who'd be crossing it, who'd be using it. And when we talk about design thinking, it's spending that time about the people who will use our products and for whom we are innovating to make sure that what it is that we're doing affects them in a way that leads to a positive experience. So as such, design thinking is the collision of human-centered design and creative problem solving. Human-centered design as in developing for the people who use the product, services, and processes that we're creating, and creative problem solving as in the transformative way that your organization develops products, services, processes, and that is that collision that we're looking for, that we're bringing together to create a design thinking strategy. There are a couple of tenets when we talk about design thinking that we'd like to point out. Design thinking is human-centered. We ground everything we do in the human needs and feedbacks through engaging and empathizing with the people that we're impacting. It's collaborative. If you truly want to be successful as an innovation organization, cross-functional teams, diverse teams are key to represent different perspectives of the various stakeholders. It's perfectly fine to bring in those people with the ideas, the thinking big. Those are the folks that bring imagination, but also bring in the people who are critical, who are the designers, the thinkers, the solvers, because they are going to bring that convergence, the appropriateness, and you need both. And cross-functional teams allow you to have different viewpoints presented on your product development team. Design thinking is creative, but it's not a free-for-all. It is structured. There are rules, there are methods, there are templates, and we're going to actually, later in our panel, look at some of those and how we can facilitate that structured approach very effectively. When we do design thinking, we are prototype driven. We use visual representations of our ideas and solutions that can be tested very quickly, that can be taken to our stakeholders, demonstrated without much investment to validate that what we are thinking about, what we're trying to accomplish, what we're proposing truly resonates with our intended audience. And last but not least, it's iterative. We always test our ideas and prototypes with the users and stakeholders to validate them throughout the process. Understand their feedback and then redesign based on that feedback to create a better solution. And that iteration creates truly effective, truly innovative, and truly usable products. My last slide in this little introduction is to introduce you to the double diamond of innovation. Double diamond of innovation is a tool that I use in my design thinking workshops a lot. To create transformational change, it basically embraces this idea of divergence and convergence, of thinking big before making choices. When we have somebody come in to us with interest, expressing interest in doing something, it is very easy to jump immediately through to exploring solutions. How could we do this? The person comes to you and says, I need a SharePoint site. You say, yeah, okay, yeah, let's go, let's make it happen. Instead of asking, why do you need a SharePoint site? What is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to accommodate, create? What outcome do you want to create, right? And in asking these questions, in gaining insight, we're diverging out, we're thinking big, we're kind of, branching out a little bit. We're trying to understand what it is, what outcome it is that our users are after. And so we might find that instead of creating a SharePoint site, what they're really interested in perhaps is connecting with their co-workers, across the globe, or better communicating on a project or whatever it might be. But now we moved away from a solution towards an outcome. As we kind of gain this insight, we might identify multiple possible outcomes. And now we can bring in the appropriateness, the convergence. We're kind of converging down to identify the key outcomes that we need to address for our user to be happy and successful. There's a convergence. So you remember our diamond from earlier? There's one of those diamonds, right? And this is the problem space, the problem domain. Gaining insight, defining the true problem that we're trying to solve. Creating and defining the measurable outcomes that we need to generate in order to be successful. And then we diverge out again. We explore solutions. We look at the different ways that it might be possible to generate these outcomes. And those different ways might include technology, they might include culture, they might include processes, they might include other things. It is not just one dimension that we want to look at. We want to look at all of those dimensions. And again, we will have a plethora of possible approaches. And again, we bring in appropriateness. Might it be feasibility, might it be viability, to decide, make choices towards the solutions that we're actually implementing to create the desired impact. And this being an iterative process, we go through this very quickly on the prototyping level. Then we iterate. We bring it back to the user. We gain insight again. We identify problems with our solution. We iterate on measurable outcomes, re-explore, rapidly validate towards impact. And this iteration goes on over and over and over again until we are arriving at the state where we think that our outcomes are achieved and our users are satisfied. So with this, I'm going to kind of close out here with respect to this little introduction to innovation and design thinking. I hope this has provided value to you. If you have any questions, obviously reach out to me. And we will be, in a moment, switching over to the panel, where we will actually demonstrate some of these approaches on the real problem and kind of walk through how design thinking can be applied to actually achieve those type of outcomes. With that, thank you very much, and reach out if you have any comments, any questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.